watching The Producer's Room, a streaming web series featuring the creators behind the hit songs of today's music industry. Songwriters, music producers, and artists discuss their creative process as well as examining current issues and technologies in today's rapidly changing music business. Your host is producer, songwriter, and educator Dave Tuff. Welcome to The Producer's Room.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Producer's Room with Dave Tuff, and I'm really excited about our guest today. In fact, I consider him a friend now. We're here at the Westwood Studios, well, the cabin, and we are here with mixer Billy Decker. Billy just achieved his 11th #1 single on the country charts, which is so exciting. So without further ado, we're going to get to talking with Billy Decker. So welcome, Billy, to The Producer's Room.
Thanks for having
me. We know each other, so
yes, we do. We go back a long time.
We do, man, and it's crazy. Like I just kept hearing your name, around Nashville, and Billy, he's the guy to mix it, and I was like, yeah, I got to check this guy out. So one day, we had actually talked because you were mixing the Lost Trailer stuff, and of course you're mixing Rodney's stuff too, and this guy is doing it well, and. The thing that amazed me is that you were really, and we'll go to this later on, is you were doing it all in the box, which to me is like the new frontier, and that's just cool. So later on, we'll get into some of Billy's mix techniques, but let's first talk about just like where you're from, did you grow up playing instruments or writing songs and all that? So where are you from?
I was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska,
oh, cool.
And then moved to Lincoln, and then ended up in a small town called Beatrice, which is about an hour and a half south of Omaha.
Okay.
Yes, I was always involved in music. Always wanted to be. Every engineer is always a failed rock star, they say,
right?
Or a one that didn't make it.
Yeah.
So I always played guitar just enough not to embarrass myself.
Yeah.
A little piano. But I grew up always playing in bands.
Cool.
And during college, I went to the University of Nebraska and studied criminal justice. I was going to be like an FBI guy or something, CIA spy or something. And I'd always had a college band, and the bands that had the best sound and demo tapes got the best gigs.
Yeah.
Fraternity, sorority parties, campus parties, whatever. So after college, I went to Full Sail.
Oh, cool.
Center for the Recording Arts in Orlando.
In Orlando,
yes.
So you made that trip. That was your first time.
And I did that back when it was like a 9-month program.
Right.
Didn't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
And only lasted 9 months.
Yeah.
I had 5 kids in my class. Now I think they have 200
like a
kids
huge
now.
university now. Yeah.
So I went down there with the assumption that I was going to learn how to make my band sound better so I could make more money. And when I got down there, I realized I was way better on this side of the glass than the performing side. So I stayed, never went back.
Now, what did they teach you? Tracking, mixing, just the basics, kind of?
Just the basics. Basics. The majority you learn when you get out in the real world and ask questions and intern. I interned at a couple different studios.
Sure.
Put out feelers, ended up getting hired at a studio in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And did a stint there for about a year.
Yeah.
And then finally made my way down to Nashville.
And so were you like this huge fan of country music, or Nashville just stuff seemed like it was happening here as far as...
I was doing R&B and hip hop in Virginia Beach. And it was
And that was the whole scene of...
Yes.
Timberland, or who's over there?
Teddy Riley.
Teddy Riley,
was there. I was working for a guy named Michael Bivens of Belle Biv DeVoe.
Yeah.
And at a studio that was owned by Rob Olsch. The studio is called Master Sound.
Oh, cool.
And it was a fantastic learning experience.
Yeah.
And I actually credit Rob Olsch, the owner, for teaching me how to EQ.
Nice.
So he would always say, his little saying was, find the pain, reduce the gain.
That's good.
So he will dial in a frequency, crank it all the way up, and when it starts to hurt, get rid of it.
So you make your way from Virginia Beach to here, and I know like our normal setting is at the House of David Studios. They said that, Billy's assisted here a lot.
That was my first place I got in at and was able to start engineering at.
Okay.
So a friend of mine knew David Briggs, who owned House of David, and was like, hey, I've talked to David about you. And he's like, if you come down, he'll try to find a spot. And he did. Wow. So he put me on some CMA. He always used to do the CMA bumper theme music, in and out, and all the commercial music and stuff. And so he let me assist on that. And then from there, I just started working around town. And
so how did you move from then, because I always find it fascinating how people kind of find their way. Like, how did you move from tracking to more mixing and all of that?
Back in probably 2000,
right.
I used to, or all the way up till then, from like 96 to 2000, I would do everything. I never had an assistant. I would track, I would overdub, mix, do it. And I was working 9, 8 in the morning, you know, doing 10 o'clocks, 2 o'clocks, 6 o'clocks. I would get home at midnight. And we just had, my wife and I had our first son.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I got to figure out a better way to do this.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to be the quarterback on the football team. So I was like, all I do is mix, everybody. I'm just a mixer.
Yeah. So you just said, that's my niche. And
I
you
said,
called
that's
me,
my niche. And my dad always used to say, you can do a lot of things good, but only one thing you can try to be great at.
Right,
so,
right.
And I'm a long way from great, but I try.
Well, 11 number ones ain't bad. But so
I got a lot of people fooled.
Well, I want to go to that real quick because I think you're really a good example of people in town that can balance family life and work life. And you're like, you know, work life ends here. And I think that's a struggle with a lot of engineers to be able to keep that balance. So do you have any advice for maybe those starting out or those that are, you know?
I would say don't ever work weekends.
Yeah.
Regardless, because there's nothing in the music business that needs to be done on a Saturday that can't be done Monday before opening bell.
Right,
you know?
right.
And it really is a balancing thing. If your home life is great, but your work life is bad, I mean, it's off. And vice versa. If you're working all the time, your home life is bad, all you do is find a balance. You get a balance, and it's like everything starts happening.
Sure.
Know?
And you seem to have some other interests outside of mixing. Those probably contribute back. Like you were just telling me you were getting some wood from.
I do. I enjoy that. That's kind of my decompression thing. And
yeah.
I think I'm one of the last few guys that actually still mows his grass too in the music business. I don't farm that out. I love doing that.
Yeah,
so.
And you still have time. Like the other day, you were telling me you were going out to help a friend, and that's. I mean, I would just think that the pressures from all the labels and the clients with the deadlines, especially mixing, would just. But you just kind of got to take a breath and.
You do. You do. Another funny thing that was told to me is, we're in the music business. We're not trying to put men on the moon. We're just trying to put them on the radio. So weigh that out, you know.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've got like doctor friends that are like, hey, I'm saving lives, you know.
Yeah.
You're just mixing music.
I know. It seems like sometimes we take it too seriously, you know, because it is such a competitive business, you know. Yeah, yeah.
But just, I would say to people starting out, just find a good balance.
Yeah,
you know. Don't work too much. Work hard enough, but don't kill yourself.
Yeah.
You know? Have fun.
Yeah.
And it all falls into place.
That's cool. So another thing that people might not know about you that I think that you should mention is when you moved to town, you were also a songwriter, and you had a songwriting deal for a little while, right?
I did. I couldn't get hired as an engineer, and I actually fell in. Actually, here's the truth. I can't get arrested for this years after, and you're a Belmont instructor, so I actually snuck into Belmont late one night. We won't tell anyone. Yes, and stole all the internship postings on the board.
Right.
And this was probably
back in the board days. Yeah.
Yeah, 1998.
Yeah.
And there was a song plugger internship apprentice. So I ended up calling, and he's like, well, you're like 23. You're an awful old Belmont student, aren't you? And I'm like, well, this is the story. So I ended up getting that and did a little stint as a song plugger. That turned into a full-time job where I was plugging, pitching songs around town with songwriters that were on staff at this company. And I was like, man, I can do this. I mean, I used to write songs in the band I was in. I don't know if they're any good.
Yeah.
So I wrote 10 songs, demoed them, and I could do all this super cheap just because of what I do.
Yeah.
You know, and I had friends in studios, and I got musician friends I swapped out, mixing for and stuff. And actually pitched it around and got signed at Curb Music Publishing.
Look at you, man.
And so I became a staff writer there for 5 years, and then a guy by the name of Ben Vaughn, who now runs Warner Chappell, signed me at Big Tractor, which is Scott Hendrick's company.
Right.
So I met Scott.
Wow.
And was engineering and writing at the same time, and it just got where I was doing two things kind of good and not one great.
Right.
So
how do you think that?
I'll let the writing go.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of writers come to you and they trust you to. You're mixing some demos. I know you're doing mainly masters now, but because these writers for years have just trusted you to mix their demos. So how do you think that experiences informs what you do now with mixing?
That's another piece of advice I would give to anybody engineering or recording is from day one I have mixed anything for anybody anytime. So demo, indie record, master, it doesn't matter. I just love mixing.
Right.
Every single master I've done has come from somebody hearing a demo.
Right.
Or the producer that wrote the song ended up becoming big, and now all of a sudden I work for them.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
this latest Chris Young record that I just mixed, Corey Crowder produced it, who's a fantastic songwriter. I met him through a demo.
Cool.
And he just kept going, dude, I love the demos. You want to make a record? And I was like, sure.
Yeah.
So and songwriters have kept my kids in tennis shoes for 19 years now, my oldest one.
Yeah.
So I will keep doing demos till the day I die because it's almost like paid practice. I can try new sounds, techniques, samples.
So that brings me to another question. When you were getting started as a mixer, did you have any mixers you looked up to, or were you using reference tracks, or how? I mean, it's a big divide between, hey, I'm just going to start moving faders and trying out these plugins and all that, to really, is that just time spent? Is that having some references? See, they're calling right now for you, man. They're calling for him right now.
Actually, that is a guy wanting to tweak.
The life of a mixer. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to define of how you get from just starting to there. I mean, is there any quick way, or is it just, like you said, just mixing everything that comes through the door and getting better and better?
Yes.
Yeah.
All the above.
Yeah.
I've always been one to say, ask as many questions as you can of as many people.
Right.
So, and a lot of my heroes, back in the day, I didn't have access to, but now I do. I know somebody that knows them, so I'm the kind of person that'll just pick up a phone or send an email and say.
You think most guys are willing to share, right? I mean, it's a different world.
Yeah.
It's not like Eddie Van Halen, trying to turn around.
No. I think most of them, and especially now since I've got a little baggage under my belt, they'll be like, oh, okay, this kid's not fresh out of Belmont or Full Sail. But I was fortunate enough to, actually back in the day, I actually cold called Bob Clearmountain. And
nice.
He picked up the phone. And I was working on this record for Asylum Records, of all things, way back in the day. And I was like, man, you remember that Bryan Adams record, the Everything I Do For You, had those huge drums?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, can I have them? And he's like, yeah, hang on.
Wow.
You really like those?
Wow.
And this was like 10 years after that record came out. He's like, I'm flattered. So he sent me his whole collection.
Gosh.
He's like, now I don't have all of them because some of them came from the other producer, Mutt Lang, who he's working. He goes, but all my stuff, and I can get you close. Wow. And he put a CD of his samples in the mail and just mailed it to me.
Yeah. I think that's what it's all about, and that's why we're here, just sharing so we all get better and, we all grow in our craft. So that's cool. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Billy Decker. Stay tuned.
I have a gift of playing music. That's what I got. I was pretty much afraid of everything. Afraid of the world, afraid of speaking. Music was the voice I didn't have.
Welcome back to the Producer's Room. We're here with Billy Decker once again, Mix Star. Thanks for being on. I have to shake hands every time. So the question I have written down here, and I think it's important because the business has changed in the last 10, 15 years. So the question is, how has the rise of the home studio affected what you do? Like, I guess when you get a session, are the tracks, people cutting all the stuff at home, are they different? Do you have to do more work on them? Are there more tracks? Is there more filler in there that people should have muted but they didn't? I guess that whole thing, the line between a professional studio and a home or a demo studio, is that changing what you're having to do on your end? Or you're working with professionals, so it's not.
But a lot of times I'll do songwriter demos that have been done at home, and typically I always tell everybody, as long as it's not distorted, we can make it work, you know?
Right.
And even if it is distorted or something like that, we can try to hide it. But
yeah, or over compressed maybe. I had this one guy
all
and he
the
was
time.
just smashing a vocal, and there's really not too much
looks
you
like,
can
well,
do.
of course, all my mixes look like duct tape anyway, so I'm not going to yell at anybody for over compressing something.
So if you had your, if you had your ideal mix that came to you, would and this, we're getting a little bit technical now, but would everything be consolidated, or do you not mind everything in pieces, or what sample rate, what bit depth, or you can work with all that?
It really doesn't matter since I'm 100% in Pro Tools.
Right.
9 times out of 10 people will Dropbox me or hightail me files.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like it when I get the full session.
Yeah.
And I tell them, don't worry about cleaning up the toms or editing, anything like that. I've just got such a quick way of a good workflow that I'm used to.
Do you get stuff from people cutting in Logic and then exporting the files? And
All
giving
the
you
time, all the time. And I'll get consolidated waves. And the only mistake is they won't give me the tempo sometimes, so I have to call them or email them back so I can put it on my grid.
Yeah.
And then if I need to lock drums or whatnot or tighten something up.
So, go ahead.
It does not matter.
Yeah,
no,
well, that's
I get
good. I mean,
all
you're
formats,
flexible.
always.
It's not like you're like rigid. I have to have this sample rate and bit depth and all that. Yeah. So I'm going to do the flip side now. When the label's asking you for all this stuff, like, I know that's just kind of a nightmare sometimes for mixers. It's like, what mixes are they asking you for? Like vocal up, vocal down? Are they asking you to archive things a certain way? All that stuff.
Yes, each there's really not an industry standard, even though there is.
Yeah, but still.
Per se, each label wants different things.
Yeah.
But they'll always want stems, meaning they want a 2-mix of just the drums, a 2-mix of just the...
Is that for remixes later, or is that for easy recall, or
exactly.
all the above?
Yeah, and all you do is put everybody at 0, and then if they need to do a remix or something, they can just bump one of the 2 mixes.
And I actually was asking you for stems for live too, and I guess that's more common nowadays. Like
very common.
Yeah,
everybody, even little bar bands, are now running tracks. So
right, because they may not have the budget for the keyboard player. I mean, in my case, my client, it was like he didn't have the budget for the keyboard player, so we'll just put the keyboard parts in the stem or whatever, the strings or so, and you're flexible that way too, so that's great. I mean, I think a lot of it is just, I mean, you're always saying, I can do that. I mean, I think that's so much of your job. It's like you're not complaining, you're not, I mean, and I appreciate that of working with you. I can do that. So speaking of the I can do that, like, at what point, and this is what I
asked me something for your session the other day. Hey, cut.
No, I'm going to ask you about revisions, because to me that's kind of like the bane of being a mixer, is like the revisions. And how many revisions are you like? At what point do you say, hey, I'm standing my ground, like I believe in this, or you always doing the revisions, or like it's round 6 of revisions? I guess just the whole revision thing in general. Like,
I stop when the client says they're happy.
Okay.
And I kid you not. I think I'm one of the only guys, well, I don't know if I'm the only guy, but I always have from day one told everybody that I warranty my work and will stop when they're happy.
Wow.
And every once in a while somebody will be 10 or 12 times down the road, I'm like, okay, really? I think a quarter dB on that tambourine track probably is not going to keep this from going to number 1.
Yeah.
But I still do.
Yeah.
So it's all about, that's another piece of advice I would give younger or up and coming or even current engineers right now. I've never had to just sit at home and wait for the phone to ring. There's always somebody calling me for something, and it's probably because one of my friends said, hey, dude, you're definitely not the best, but you're probably the easiest to work with and one of the nicest guys.
And I think that's a lot of it, those people.
And your studio smells good, because I always burn Nag Champa incense.
You can't smell through the camera here, people, but we got some nice incense. You in the back there? Oh, yeah, okay. Ah, yes.
The smell of rock.
Champa.
This is the best.
Really? All right.
Oh, yeah, great.
All right, cool.
Here, I'll give you a stick so you can take one home.
I'll just smell it. Ooh, thank you. My wife will thank me, being a yoga teacher. All right, I'll put it back down. All right, so let's see what else we got. So I'm going to ask you, this segment is called, what is this segment called? Well, we'll do on the record later, but this segment's called Rapid Fire, and we usually do this later on, but I want to do it now. So,
okay.
And if some of these make you feel uncomfortable, that's the reason behind it. So 3 to 5 desert island albums, and maybe why you would consider that. So you're stuck on a desert island, or songs, and you can only have like 3 CDs, 3 or 4 or 5 CDs. What would Billy Decker listen to if you had to listen to something over and over and enjoy?
Def Leppard.
Cool.
AC/DC.
Yeah.
And Back in Black, the Def Leppard, Hysteria.
Yeah.
That one.
That's, man, I'm right there with you.
And my last one, probably, you know what? I'm going to go current. I'm going to say Five Finger Death Punch.
Nice, man. That's good. I like that. Any particular album there, or just some of their songs?
It's all been mixed and produced by the same guy.
Yeah. Cool. Rock on, dude.
Got it going on.
We can tell you're a rocker.
He's one of those guys that mix something that I'll go, wow.
So
I can usually figure out how to do that, but I need to send him an email because I can't figure that one out.
To my next question, where do you continually find inspiration? Like listening to some of your peers' work, or listening to the radio, or, I mean, what's pushing you to...
All the above.
Yeah.
All the above.
Yeah.
And I always try to listen to other stuff in my format to see if I'm keeping current, or if I'm falling behind, or if I'm, by some chance, edging in front of somebody.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I'll go and dive into the hard rock stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's where, God, I don't know, it's... In Nashville, drums sound like drums, real drums.
Yes.
And in hard rock, drums don't sound like real drums.
Right.
They're a little synthetic sounding and hypey. And I love that.
Yeah. And we'll get into some of that when you're talking about some of your mix techniques.
Okay.
All right. So this one's a weird one, but what are you afraid of? What are you best at? And you can be honest, or you can bail.
What am I afraid of?
Either personally, professionally. I know that gets a little deep, so I don't want you to, it's like you could answer, well, I'm afraid of death, or I'm afraid of, whatever. But we don't need to go that deep. But we could talk professionally.
Yeah, what am I afraid of? A mix with 125 tracks, because it will take me longer than my normal 2 hours of mix.
Yes. I like that.
I mix very, very fast.
Well, speaking of that, I'm going on a tangent now, but what typical mix on the radio? Are we hearing, let's country radio, 50 tracks, 100 tracks?
I would, no. Drums, probably 12 tracks, not even that.
If they're capturing the rooms, they're capturing each of the
drums,
toms.
And then bass, couple acoustics.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Everything is way easier than it sounds.
Right.
For lack of a, better term. I've got one steel track. I've got a synth pad. I've got vocals. I've got 4 background vocals. They're doubled.
Yeah.
I would say this is probably 30 tracks.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Yeah, in Nashville.
So,
now
I mean,
pop,
you're not getting crazy. Okay, go ahead and pop.
In pop, and then now, especially because there's a lot of programming going on in Nashville, I'll get everybody programs in Logic.
Yeah.
Everybody loves that, and then they'll export it. But for some reason, they always export stereo tracks, even if it's a mono signal.
Right. So how do you figure all that out?
I'll put it in there, and then I'll separate it if it's not a stereo track. I'll turn it into mono, but typically I'll get shakers stereo.
Yeah.
It's a mono, and I get like 5 tracks of mono shakers that are 10 tracks of stereo shakers.
Right.
So it looks worse than it is.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm afraid of.
That's true. And I think we already answered the best at. I mean, just making the client happy, doing your best work, all that. But if you want to add to that, you can.
I've actually
woodworking. We know that too.
I've actually been told people really. I want to be known for my drums.
Yeah, that's.
And I'm still working on that. But everybody, for some reason, knows me for my vocal sound.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's probably because of coming up in that R&B world.
Yeah.
So, and I learned how to just do that super breathy, where you hear like they're like right there in your face.
Yeah.
And has the little shimmer that spits off the back of it,
if
that's a word.
Yeah.
And applied it in country, and I mean, it's really compressed, really in your face. If you saw the needle on the 1176, I mean, it's slamming in the left side.
I'm really excited. 2 more rapid fire questions. So, and some of these we may have already covered, but the best piece of business advice that was given to you coming up that you would maybe want to pass on, and maybe we've already shared that, I don't know, but
the best piece of business advice
on the business side of things
would be, I am no different than the dude in the drive-thru asking people if they want ketchup and mustard on their hamburger. I'm just asking if they want Reverb Delay on their mix.
Right. So it's a service business.
It's all about customer service.
Yeah.
And if you treat them right, do it for a fair price, and especially in the music business, one of the things I learned from writing songs is these clients are coming to you and songwriters are a different breed. Everybody will tell you that, and
Yeah.
artists are too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just the whole music business is always me, and everybody needs validation. Even myself, you know,
Right.
I need people telling me it sounds good,
Yeah.
or bad.
Yeah.
You know, hopefully
Yeah.
not. But if I came in and a songwriter brought me 5 songs, or an artist brought me their song to mix, that's like their little baby.
Right.
Now, if I start saying, "Hey, your baby's ugly,"
Right.
you know, or I slap their baby,
right.
I'm never going to work again.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of people make that mistake. They don't realize, just be honest, do your best,
Right.
and never say no, always say yes,
Yeah.
and just do it with a smile on your face. Even
That's
if it, my wife's always like, you come home and you're always grumpy, it's because it's like I'm so nice at work all day.
Right, that's true, yeah.
She's being facetious,
yeah,
of course, but
yeah, no, I mean,
but-
you are delivering. Like, I'm never, the times we worked together, I never had an issue with working with
no,
you. Always have a
I
smile
will
on your
never
face.
argue, and
Yeah.
the client is always right.
Exactly.
It really does.
Well, what about
make
those
sense.
clients that don't know how to verbalize things? I guess would be the hardest thing about a mixer. Like, they come in and they say, that just sounds too muddy or too scratchy. Well, what? You know, I mean, how do you just start soloing things or start changing things? Or
Well,
how do you-
actually, being in that songwriting world, that helped me learn how to decipher
Into
some
the
of
technical,
the terms. So if somebody comes in and says, "Man, my mix sounds gray, it's like muddy," that means it's too dark. You got to brighten it up or
right.
carve some of that low
Sure,
mud out.
Sure, sure.
The one that's hard is when somebody goes, "You know what? That voice, it sounds like kind of like a magenta. It needs to sound like more."
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah,
all right,
I
we
don't
get into
know.
the purple, so
we'll
I
just
have
try
no
some
idea
stuff,
what we're doing.
Okay, last rapid fire question. Have
Mm-hmm.
you ever owned a piece of inflatable furniture?
Yes.
You have. Okay.
And I think I still have it up in my bonus room.
Nice. I like
When the
that.
kids were little, we had these, they were like rocking chairs.
Okay, yeah.
But they were inflatable.
Okay, well, there
and
you
so
go.
they actually did rock. One of them, we got 2. I got 2 kids. One of them got popped, but we still have one.
Nice.
So.
Well, that's good. You got to keep at least that in your.
We'll save it for the grandkids, just not too soon.
All right. Well, I do want to get into actually looking at a session, but before we even do that, let's just talk generally about maybe some plugins that you really are your go-to plugins. Like, if I name a category, if I say, for instance, if I say EQ,
Metric Halo channel strip.
So that's when we were mixing the other day, I noticed a lot of your stuff is just, that's kind of the basis, because that has compression, EQ.
And it has 6 bands.
6 bands.
And they're all obviously variable Q.
Yeah.
And I'll use some of the, like the Waves SSL plugin. Everybody uses that.
Right.
But it's the Metric Halo, you can designate there. It's just 1 EQ times 6.
Right.
So you can do anything with any of those 6
Yeah,
bands.
that's cool.
And it really allows you to get in and put high
Does
pass,
it
low
add
pass
color
filters.
on that particular one, or is it more transparent?
It's like the Oxford stuff.
Okay.
The Sonic stuff, it's
Well, I saw you using
transparent.
that too, the Oxford, right?
That EQ is just like glass. It's like
so
you see right
I guess
through it.
on these decisions, like, you're like, well, this EQ is pretty non-characterless. This, if that's the word, this EQ doesn't have too much character. Like, when you're making that decision, like between those 2 EQs, for instance, just even the Metric Halo and the is it DSP stuff? Like, this is going to take more plug-in power.
No, I never worry about it. I've got this thing's pimped out.
Yeah.
I never run out of juice, so I could put 50 of them on there.
So you just kind of whatever you're feeling at that particular moment.
Yeah, if you need something that's real, you need something to color something, I guess would be a good choice,
Yeah.
Put on something that's maybe a little grainier that you know is going to change the sound.
Like which would be in your brain a Neve kind of thing, or an API? You have an API kind of.
I do. I use that a lot on
recreation.
the guitars.
Yeah.
So they've got a real cool, like a 7K bump and
Yeah.
a 3K bump. That's pretty cool. I think you can do a 5K too.
Yeah.
But it always seems to just make guitars bite.
Right.
You know?
That's cool.
And I mix, I want to say aggressive and probably on the bright side, just because that's what I tend to. And bright to me equates aggressive.
Sure.
Happy, louder.
Yeah. Okay, so that's EQ. Let's dive into compression. I know I can already answer that question. You love the L2, but that's something that I learned from you, is like the modern sound. It's like up front. It's like fat and up front, right? I mean, I hear that in your mixes. So I mean, is that why you you make that choice a lot. Because when I think of L2, I don't know, I'm old school. I think just L2 on the master bus, and I don't know how that got in my brain. That you can just use limiters on a master bus, but you can use them on anything, right?
They're almost on every instrument.
Yeah,
So to me, I didn't have many plugins when I started out, and for some reason I had that. I bought the Waves
cool,
pack,
man. You find what
and
works
I just put it on something I needed to make bigger and louder.
Yeah.
It's idiot proof. You pull one fader down, and it's like
I didn't even have a attack or release.
No.
You just pull it down. That's the compression. And okay, but I know also, like, when you're talking about your vocal sound, you use the 1176. Which there's so many out there. Which one do you like?
I use the Waves.
Okay.
And I use the blue.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I use the black
CLA one or the Okay.
Yeah, the blue one.
Yeah.
I actually had the good fortune of meeting him. He actually
cool.
came in when I was doing a mix session.
This is Chris Lord-Alge for our audience. We're talking in the Waves L2 plugin. We probably should spell it out a little bit. We're just talking technical stuff.
The studio manager over at Soundstage, where I was for 15 years, is good friends, kind of came up in the ranks out in Northern California.
Yeah.
And Southern California with him. And Chris Lord-Alge was in town for a day speaking or something.
Yeah.
Doing something maybe at Blackbird Academy or something. He was giving a lecture. Maybe it was at Belmont. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably Blackbird.
Yeah. And my studio manager over there knew how big of a fan I've always been of his. Who isn't?
Yeah, exactly.
Duh. And so I was mixing, and I was facing the console, and they snuck in the room without me knowing, and all of a sudden I heard, "Hey!" And I turned around and I stopped, and I just looked up, and I literally just got up and I hugged him.
Oh, that's nice, man.
I said, I don't even know if I said, I just got up, I went, he's
man.
like, thank you.
It's good to have
But
it.
he actually took time. He stayed with me about a half an hour and actually said, I hear you're trying to be me. I said, well, mimicry is the greatest form of flattery. He's like, well, I can't stop you, but I can help you.
Nice.
And I was like, whoa. He's like, snap up a session. Let me see. He went through every single channel and said, yes, no, don't do that. I do that. That's right. That's right. That's it. And he validated or helped change. And it was just like, oh,
yeah, man.
the Holy Grail.
Anything that stuck with you, like a one or two pieces of advice that you were doing?
He told me not to use the L2.
Really?
He goes, what do you keep smashing everything with that damn limiter for?
Dude, I don't know. I like what you do.
So I actually was I called over. I don't have his email, but the studio manager over there has his email. And when I got this 11th number one just a couple weeks ago, it has the L2 on it. And I was going to take a picture and just send it to him and say, thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
But he was super cool.
So we talked compression. Well, let's talk master bus compression. The sonic stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Inflator or whatever, or limiter.
Yes.
I love that stuff too.
A friend of mine turned me on to that out in Vegas, Kevin Churko, who speaks very highly of that company, and obviously his work is phenomenal.
Right.
And he kind of tipped me off and said, hey, I use this. Try some of this stuff. Because I asked him. I just point blank said, dude, your stuff is huge. It sounds great. And so he steered me into a couple different plugins. He also puts an EQ on his two-bus, and I'd never done that before. So I started kind of playing with that. That Kramer Pi.
Oh, yeah.
Compressor.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool if you just barely kiss it.
On the master bus?
On the master bus.
Really?
Yeah. So if you hit it too hard, the mix just shrinks.
Yeah.
That happens with anything if you hit it too hard.
Yeah, man. There's so many master bus cool things you can do. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, I'm going to go on a tangent now again, because we were talking about radio mixes.
Okay.
Because you're mixing a lot of stuff that's on the radio. And so I was asking you, how does the radio limiter change what you're doing? So you said if you know you're mixing a single for radio, what do you do again?
I spent a lot of time with a guy over at Georgetown Masters named Andrew Mendelson.
Yeah, Andrew,
he masters, and so he's very familiar with what radio uses and stuff. We actually, about 5 years ago, set up like a fake radio setup, and we were like pumping mixes out and beta tested them through it. And what we figured out is radio is almost like, if you mix, it's like I told you this earlier, it's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Yeah. And the radio is like somebody with a hand smashing down the peanut butter, and the bass is just oozing out the sides of the peanut butter and jelly. Right. So we purposely will mix a little bass shy. We'll drop the bass down. Usually we have to put a little extra spike on the kick and snare, because a lot of times those will get flattened out. Yeah. And
That's cool.
Usually I will bump the vocal louder than necessary because once the bottom comes up and the top comes down, it seems to too loud of a
5
vocal.
0.5 dB or a dB, or I guess it just varies.
Yeah,
right?
half to 1.
Yeah.
I'll do like a vocal up.
Yeah.
If I know it's if it's right on the bubble, because 9 times out of 10 the vocal will get pushed down.
Yeah.
So I always try to oof it up.
Okay.
And I also mix really hot. I try to get everything so that the radio won't touch the mix.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I try to get it.
Verbs and delays, and then we'll actually, it's like I'm gravitating. We'll move to the box in the next segment and talk about an actual mix. But verbs and delays, like your go-to, just
Renaissance reverb. And then the delay I use on the vocal. Excuse me.
That was a really cool delay. I remember it because it's a little bit filtered, or not filtered, but it's a little. It's not like
Echo Farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that's
that
cool.
stomp box delay pedal.
That's cool.
And I use the. Well, here it is, right here. What's the
setting you use on it?
Yeah, I forget the name of it. It's on everything I ever do. Right there, the Memory Man, the old Memory Man.
Memory Man, but that Echo Farm I think is only HD systems.
Yes,
so
they don't have it anymore.
Native. Wah, wah.
Yeah, I've got a friend who mixes.
Yeah.
Probably more stuff on the radio than I do, and he posted on Facebook the other day. He's like, "I miss Echo Farm."
Yeah, it's a great plugin. So as far as strategy, we still don't need to be in the box to talk about this. So you import everything. Mm-hmm. Are you starting with drums first? Or is there no real order? You just kind of listen to the song, getting some faders?
No, I do everything the exact same way. I use a lot of templates.
Okay.
So I will open a session. I will import in the skin from another session.
Right.
So the entire session minus the audio.
Yeah.
That I know sounds good, and then I'll drag down the new audio and put it in the place of the old song that I know sounds good.
Right.
And then go back and erase the top stuff.
Yeah.
And then there I have a new session.
And so that's kind of balanced already. I mean, it's kind of balanced, so that makes your life easier as far as that goes.
It's like having an assistant.
Yeah, exactly.
A personal assistant that already plugged everything in and all that stuff.
And then at that point, are you starting with any particular instrument? You just kind of gravitate to certain things?
Always the drum.
Okay, just start
always
with
the drums, add the bass,
then the
guitars, and the vocal always comes last.
Okay, and then compression, EQ, and verbs, and then automation, or is there a certain order with how all that falls? Or are you just doing each for each thing? So like the drums, you would get the right amount of compression, then the right amount of EQ, then the right amount of reverb, and then move to the next thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and it happens really fast just with the templates and stuff.
Boom, boom, boom.
And then automation's always at the end.
Yeah.
So I'll get the song shaped in and then go through and start cleaning up regions and added unwanted noise.
Well, even in that point, I think it's important to speak about automation, your monitoring setup here. Tell us a little bit. We know you're using Pro Tools here. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little about your monitoring setup, and then I don't know if our camera can. I think it can kind of get that boombox behind you, but why you use each sets of monitors and all that.
These are Mackeys,
Yeah.
the newer ones, and from day one, I've started with Mackeys, the 824s, the old ones, the square ones, and just got really used to them. I've got a Quested sub, an 18-inch sub plugged in the back.
Right. And
I've tried every speaker. Over at Soundstage, they were like, dude, we'll buy you anything you want. Pick one. So I had $10,000 speakers all the way down to $200 speakers.
Right.
And I could never get anything to sound
as long as you know
it's
them,
comfortable.
Man.
Yeah, and you really can. You can mix on whatever you want as long as you're comfortable with it.
Yeah. Okay, and then these little guys.
The little ones are called Wathen speakers. They're a small company out of, I believe, Austin.
Okay.
And they are the coolest sounding and looking speakers I've ever had. So a friend of mine turned me on to them, and Carl, one of the owners down there, came up, and he's actually building me a sub to go with them.
Nice.
So they've got their own sub that's dialed in, but they're stacked plywood, and I'm super into woodworking. So these speakers just went, oh, wow, that's like, these make sense to me. Wood always sounds good in the studio.
Yeah,
I don't care. I mean, look where we are here. I'm in a place called The Cabin.
So what's the idea behind those? Are they're like NS10 kind of thing, or are they just...
They almost remind me of old tannoys. They're fun to listen to.
Right.
So I'll do most of the heavy lifting and the balancing, and then I'll put them over on those to fine tweak, and then I also shoot everything from day one I have over to an old
so
JVC
let's tell our
boombox.
audience the whole concept about why would you listen on a boombox kind of thing. Tell us why you listen so much on the boombox or whatever we call it now. In my day, we call it the ghetto blaster. I don't know if that's PC anymore. I don't know, but
I figured if I could make something sound good on the lowest common denominator, which probably nowadays are earbuds. Everybody listens on earbuds. If you can make it sound good on that, it probably will be good anywhere.
Yeah, that's great.
But you really can't tell low end on that and in earbuds to a thing. So you really need different. I still check everything in my car.
Exactly.
I love
the car
listening
test.
to the car. I live about 25 minutes outside of town.
I was driving.
So driving in and driving out, I always do it.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break and be back with Billy, and he's going to go in. We're going to go into the box. That sounds like we're going to go somewhere else, but we're just going to look at what he's doing at the computer, and we'll see you then.